Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today on behalf of Cyversity and the Twin Cities chapter. We are very excited to have you join us and speak to a really cool variety of panelists today, talking about the different kinds of careers that you can have in cyber consulting. So to kick us off, I'll do a quick intro. My name is Grace Hinton. I'm a director here at Protiviti. Protiviti is a global consulting firm. We have 11,000 employees around the world, and we do about 2 billion or more in revenue every year. So pretty large global consulting firm. We do a really wide variety of work for our clients across many different kinds of industries. We help them with internal audit, with their risk and compliance functions. We do a lot in automation, AI, and different kinds of tooling, and a lot in the technology space, including the folks on this call today are coming from a variety of backgrounds in our security practice. So our goal for today is to help you all understand and learn a little bit about the variety of different ways that you can work in security, and specifically what is consulting and what is that intersection like, and what are the different kinds of careers there for you. So without further ado, I would love to turn it over to my team. And maybe, Charles, you're on my top left, so I could start with you. Can you do a quick intro to the team to tell us a little bit about who you are and what your specialty is and how you help your clients?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Grace, and thanks for having me here. My name is Charles Godwin. I'm a senior manager in Protiviti's Managed Security Services and Security Operations space. What I do for a living is help clients try to minimize or mitigate, monitor, and defend against threats and risks to their organization.
And there goes my mute. Harry, you're next up for me. Do you want to do the same?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Harry Liu. I'm associate director out of our Dallas office. I'm part of our security and privacy practice. So I've been working as a cybersecurity consultant for more than a decade. My focus area is around cloud security, and in the past few years, I have also started putting a lot more focus in AI security as well. So overall, I built my career around designing, implementing, and helping clients operationalize their cutting edge cybersecurity solutions.
Amazing. Luz?
Hello, everyone. My name is Luz. I'm also a senior manager here at Protiviti within our security and privacy practice, specifically specializing in attack and penetration testing. I help lead our enterprise security vertical within that team, so overseeing a lot of the network testing and security testing work around there. I work with clients strategizing on their security posture, security programs, and ways to strengthen and improve that. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Tricia, over to you.
Last but not least. Hi everyone. Thanks for having me. So Tricia Callahan, I've been with Protiviti and in consulting for 17 years. I'm a managing director in our security practice. I focus in security program and strategy. And so what that means is that I just focus on the things that make security work well in an organization. So that can be everything from assisting with large scale security transformation projects and initiatives to even like developing policies and procedures or awareness and training programs, things like that. So anything that kind of the nuts and bolts of how an organization is going to function, I help with that. And then I'm from the Dallas area as well, and I'm married. I have 2 little daughters running around, 6 and 4. And so, happy to be here. Thanks.
Love it. Well, thanks all for the intro. I think the most common question I get from my friends, my family, other people in the business world is, what is even a consultant, right? I think it's this term, and the role and the title associated with it is a little bit ambiguous. So wondering if I could get a couple of you maybe just to provide your thoughts on what is a consultant, and how is it different from other jobs in the security space? Harry, maybe we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, of course. Consulting to me is really applying the best practices, right? The learnings that you have observed, picked up, and developed to different client scenarios in order to help client with their unique challenges. I think really there are a couple of things that make it unique, especially compared to other jobs in the cybersecurity field. One is the variety of challenges you get on a day-to-day basis, right? This is especially true for me, for our field, cybersecurity, in which we often play a very specific subject matter specialist role, right? Charles in security operations, I'm in cloud security, Luz in penetration testing. So we get to focus on solving a particular security challenge, but we get exposed to all kinds of client profiles, their unique scenarios. Um, other jobs, especially industry jobs, tend to have a much more narrow but deeper focus, right, in the cybersecurity field. And related to that, the variety of skills that you need to have to excel at the job, right? In order to be successful in this field, you need to be a good problem solver, right? You need to have deep technical expertise, you need to master presentation skills, and you need to know how to quickly build meaningful relationships, because it's a very dynamic job and it's a people job, right? And the last part, I think it's the business nature of this job, right? Although we are all cybersecurity consultants here, we always have to put on the business lanes and really help our clients strike a balance between having good security solutions but maintaining business agility, right? So the ability to look at things with an executive, with a business view, really sets us apart from other cybersecurity jobs.
Fair. Tricia, do you have any insight as well?
Yeah. The like joke answer is for any consulting question is it depends. And so a consultant can mean a lot of different things. And obviously we all have a lot of different skill sets and areas that we focus in. I would say we're brought in by our clients to help solve problems that they either don't have the expertise, bandwidth, or interest in solving for themselves. And so what that means is we get exposure to a lot of different clients. And Harry kind of talked about this too. Like we get to see so many different, the way that things work or don't work at so many different clients. And some of our clients have been in their roles at their companies for a long time. And so they just don't get that breadth of experience. And so that's one of the things that's cool about being a consultant. I think the flip side of that is we see so many things. We also hopefully try to bring humility to our work too, because we also don't know what it's like to work in their company day to day and like the politics and things like that. So we bring a lot to the table, and then we rely on our clients as well to understand like the business that they operate within. And so, yeah, it's a fun and dynamic job. So I would agree with what Harry said there too.
Well, I heard really common themes between you both, which I heard variety a couple of times. I heard dynamic a bunch of times. And then when I think about all the different ways there is to get into the field, I think that's part of the way we kind of self-select into this career as well. Like, I don't think there's just one normal path to get into consulting. Luz, when we were catching up before this call, you mentioned you have a pretty unique career path. Do you mind telling us a little bit about how you've gotten to where you are?
Sure. So my career path in cyber started, I was an undergrad in college, and I was doing this fellowship that focused on international relations and kind of just topics that affected on a global scale. And one of those main ones was actually cyber. Like there was a lot of eyes on cyber and what that means for a country's just like security and a bunch of things. And I got to talk to a lot of people in that space, got to network with a lot of people. And basically by the end of that fellowship, I was like, okay, I think I want to do cyber. I was already majoring in IT, so it was not too far off. And so I automatically started doing research on graduate programs, Masters of Science in cybersecurity. And I ended up starting that the year after, getting a master's in digital forensics and cybersecurity. And during that time, I was interning at a bunch of places, all under cyber. So once I got into the whole academic world of cybersecurity, the more I learned, the more I was in it, the more I learned that cyber was just a big umbrella term. And there's so many ways of getting involved in cybersecurity and so many different roles and how that can look like. So I interned at tech startups doing some cybersecurity governance work, and then interned at New York City agencies doing cyber risk work. And then I went on to intern at a consulting firm, a legal solutions consulting firm, doing digital forensics. So I I got to delve into a variety of roles under cyber, all related to like in cybersecurity work, but targeting different areas of what would be an organization's like security program as a whole. So some of the governance, some of the assessment stuff, some of the more hands-on tech, like with forensics and all that. And eventually found Protivity through friends that were also in the same master's program that I was working in. And what lured me into it was just like kind of the breadth of security work that there was here and the level of how involved we would get with our clients in terms of helping them out in that area. And I've been in consulting ever since, coming almost at 8 years now. But yeah, that's how I got kind of involved in it.
Well, we're so glad that you're here and that you came your way this way. And it just makes me think, you know, that you come from this space of education, but you also did quite a bit of, with your background in education being around tech, but you also did quite a bit of wandering to get to this point, which is pretty cool. Charles, I know you have a pretty unique background too that is even more different than that.
I do. So I think I've always kind of been interested in security, and I've been in this field and cybersecurity, for coming up on a decade. Actually, it'll be a decade at this point. And I guess my original degree plan wasn't security. It was actually website design and development, but I had always kind of had a focus on security going as far back as, like cleaning viruses off my mother's computer or showing people how not to, effectively get hacked or whatever. Like I always saw these things as neat. When I started my first job in information security, it was actually network security, even though my degree plan after switching away from website design and development put me as a cybersecurity degree. They put me into the network field, and I learned actually quite a bit of network security, firewall security, but ultimately made my way over to our security operations center. And I think that's kind of really where I was able to spread my wings and learn, okay, so I've been learning these bits and pieces all along on how the bad guys work. Working in security operations gave me the kind of tools and techniques to try to stop them. And I think that was probably one of the coolest parts of the path that I took, was going there and learning how to effectively be on the other side of the coin. That led me to Protivity years later, where they brought me into the, at the time, burgeoning security operations space. But it was so much of a different world from industry, where it's like, okay, so you have to know all these things, you have to learn everything about these clients, and we need you to effectively keep them safe. I saw it as a wonderful challenge. I think that's been probably the most impressive thing about working in consulting, is the challenge. You learn, you grow, and you get to effectively help people doing the things that with the skills that you've learned over time. So that's about 10 years summed up in about 2 minutes, I think.
Quite an achievement. Well, and a couple of the things you said a few times is that there's a huge element of continuous learning, right? Because our clients are expecting us to bring leading practices and be up on the news and the most relevant skills. And you talked a little bit about, your exposure and getting opportunities to learn. That is something that I think with this field in particular, with cyber really being that ever evolving field, our clients are expecting us to be up on trends, tools, new attacks, new stories. So I'd be curious if anyone here, Luz, maybe you, especially coming from like a tech and pen lens, where I feel like the tech and the tools are evolving so quickly, and what we're up against is maybe the way to phrase that. How do you stay up to speed technically in this really continuously changing world?
Yeah, it's a great question, Grace. So one of my favorite ways is attending conferences, cybersecurity focused conferences. It's a great way, and it kind of tackles a bunch of different objectives. One is to network with people and seeing what is everyone else working on, what are they researching, and attending those talks, and that end up being like the result of all this research that people are going into, fun projects that they're working on the side. And everyone has like their regular jobs, so these are things that they're passionate about, really working on, digging into, doing all the research, writing white papers on, presentations, doing labs, demos. Great to see that stuff, but it also gives you a hint of what are things that not just clients, but organizations and people are looking at, and kind of gives you a good insight into what the trends are in cybersecurity space, whether it's evolving in terms of like the threat landscape, or what are the things that people are doing research on that are gonna end up affecting our clients, some of the technologies that they use in their environment and all of that stuff. So in terms of staying up to date, that's one of my favorite ways of doing that. Another one is connecting with people via social media and really using that as a tool to stay in touch with others, but also seeing what they're posting on, what are the questions out there, following security blogs, their articles, any of those thought leadership things that they're putting out there, and really what the conversations are about. So kind of making sure that you're following the right people in those spaces, that folks that are SMEs in certain areas, so that you're also staying on top of some of that stuff. And then lastly, in terms of the all of that also encompass technical stuff, but also certifications. If we know there are recent attack trends and stuff, or specific methodologies around some of the things that our clients are seeing, there's always certs out there that will help you kind of specialize in some of those very technical aspects. So whether that's cloud, network testing, application security, there's a bunch of stuff out there and resources. And a lot of trainings and just things like that are out there at either free or a good cost in terms of YouTube videos and all of that. I know if you go on YouTube and just research introduction to penetration testing, you can find 12-hour long videos that will literally walk you through where to start, what does that look like, and then kind of take you from not knowing a lot to just having a pretty good foundation or basics. And then just hands-on practicing. There's a lot of online environments that are literally built and designed for you to go and try to break them or hack them. Things like Try Hack Me or Hack the Box are great. You can get started just signing up an account and kind of just work your way through some of those machines and really practice your technical skill set that way.
Love it. So many options. Curious if anyone else has anything else that they really like.
Yeah, I'll add that, cybersecurity has always been a very good community itself, right? Meaning that you always get to learn from each other, whether it's a consultant-client relationship or peers within a company. I think it's always fun to be embedded in a community, right? Depending on where your interest is, right? Like Lou says, cybersecurity is a big umbrella with so many different fields. Yeah, so one of my recommendations would be just getting embedded in a particular community. I always talk to people that not just focus on cloud security, but cloud as well, right? Because that's my specialty. So not learning just cloud security doesn't help me, right? Getting myself embedded with the broader community of cloud practitioners, checking out the latest and greatest things, attending conferences, right? I specialize in AWS, so I try to go to the AWS conferences every year, and just being able to connect with that community helps a lot, right? And you can do that through LinkedIn, do that through your local groups. You can also even do that through some of the forums that have all kinds of resources, and even YouTube, like Lou said. So yeah, I would say leverage the power of community is another good way to learn.
Love it. Well, maybe that's a good opportunity for me to shamelessly plug Cyversity and all of the education and opportunities to do networking and build your community through Cyversity. So thanks again for having us today. I'd be really curious for those who are listening in. Please feel free to share in the comments any thoughts or resources that you really like as you're trying to stay technical, or learning opportunities that you are embracing right now. As well as any questions that you have for the panelists. In a little bit, we'll open it up to audience questions, and we'll go through those comments to see what's there. So, and in addition to having education opportunities, there's a lot of, I would say, soft skill and networking opportunities through Cyversity. So I'd be curious to hear from somebody on the team. I think another narrative that surrounds cyber specifically is that you have to be really technical, and the only skills that hold people back are from a technical capacity. I think we've all seen from a business perspective and as being consultants that there's a lot of additional skills that are needed and opportunities to work when you are not a coder, let's say. So, is there anyone on the team who would speak to some of those skills that are important in the role in addition to that space?
Yeah, I can talk to that a little bit. I come from, I don't have a master's in cybersecurity. I have a tech-focused business degree and an English degree. So I didn't come out of school knowing that I was going to go into cybersecurity. I kind of fell into this role too. And there was a time where I was like, oh, I'm not technical enough. I'm not a pen tester. I'm not a developer or somebody who, has a lot of experience with like cloud computing or something. So, but I think that something I've learned, I think that some of the skills that I've learned are the most valuable are effective communication. Honestly, my English degree has really been beneficial in a lot of ways, like being able to make an argument in a written format has been really beneficial. I think also just listening and then critical thinking skills. They talked to, somebody mentioned that earlier too, like just being able to think really critically and logically. And then when there are areas that you are not as familiar with, I totally agree with what Harry and Luz mentioned as far as YouTube. How did you get into cybersecurity? Google. That's how I got into cybersecurity. A lot of Googling and then YouTube videos. There are YouTube videos on everything. And sometimes if you're not coming from a really highly technical foundation, sometimes it's hard to even find, and I think back like 10, 15 years, it was hard to find that first step to get the answer because I didn't even know some of the terms to Google to find the right answer. And so sometimes you do have to wander around in the dark. And so I agree with what Harry said about like, if you have resources or people that you can lean on to ask those questions, that can be a real time saver. But if you don't, you can usually find the answer with enough Googling. And I think there's just, I'll just say, I think there's a role for, I work really closely with somebody in our pen testing, one of the leaders in our pen testing practice. And one of his little jokes that he likes to say is, I break it, Tricia fixes it. Because pen testing and like some of those skills are so incredibly valuable, highly technical, highly specialized, so valuable to show you problem areas and show you things, but they don't always show you how to fix them. And so having people that understand organizationally how we can solve these problems, how the different solutions in a security organization and tooling can work together, how to prioritize things, like how certain things impact risk or compliance. I work a lot in financial services. There's a lot of regulatory impacts. Like what are these, like pulling all of that information that you get from these really technical folks, leaning on them, but then also bringing your own expertise to like, how do we solve these problems? I think there's a lot there.
I love that. And I think it leads in next to one of the questions that we were thinking about, Tricia, which is, as you're talking about those communication skills, I think a lot of those creative problem solving skills, that's something that we get to express all the time. And even in your background, Tricia, and being on the more strategic and program design side, I think is a pretty unique capacity in this space because it is how much you can lead forward the program and the maturity of the space, which is pretty interesting. And I think it is another great call out that consulting can be pretty different from what we tend to refer to as more traditional industry roles. I'd be curious if anyone else on the team, maybe Harry, what do you think about as some of the unique challenges that consultants face, or some of the best parts of the career that are unique to consulting?
Yeah, I think it's related to the things I mentioned earlier about what's so unique about consulting, right? It's the ability to adapt and learn, and the willingness to be flexible and develop a variety of skill sets, right? This to be honest, can be very challenging to a lot of people, especially earlier in their consulting journey. This is why we always see a pretty big turnover rate early in our cybersecurity consulting career. Close to 50% of my starting class quit after the first 2 years, right? So I'm not trying to discourage anybody to be a cybersecurity consultant, but like if this is not for you, you will find out very quickly, right? But if this is something that you chase for, myself included, I just love the dynamic nature of the job, right? It keeps pushing me to learn, to adapt, and to grow constantly. Like I'm always appreciative of that aspect of my job, right? Because I couldn't see myself stop learning and growing, and I enjoy the high paced life. And that high paced life, again, is a challenge, but also a benefit, right? You are always presented with the new challenges almost every single day, right? Client wants to learn the latest and greatest from you. The client wants to understand what you've seen elsewhere, right? It definitely pushes you to be to have to stay up to date, right? To have to really learn how to apply, have the critical thinking to apply a particular scenario in various different environments. So I will say, the challenge is you have to adapt quickly, you have to learn quickly, but the benefit is that just grow somebody so fast, right? If it's not for you, move on, right? Find something that you like, and um, do it in your pace. But if it's for you, I think you will get to learn a lot and develop very quickly as a professional in this space.
I like that framing, Harry, that the challenge is the opportunity and vice versa, right? That like it is a challenge to stay flexible and be a continuous learner for a long time. But if that's the mind space and if that's the way that you like to exist, then it kind of facilitates itself and it drives you forward. Kind of like I think Luz was saying earlier, some people, are focused on it because it's a passion. Tricia, I'd be curious for your perspective too.
Yeah. I was in an interview we were interviewing a candidate, and they actually asked me a really good question. They said, would you rather start your career at Protiviti or finish it at Protiviti? And I was like, what a good question. And I mean, I've been here for 17 years, so I'm maybe not the best answer, but I thought about it, and I think that I would want to start my career in consulting. I think that you learn, like, your whole job, especially early in your career, is like just learning and just absorbing things and just being a sponge and taking it all in. It's such an amazing, I remember after those first couple of years, just kind of like you join and you're out of school and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then I remember thinking like 2 years in, I'm like, wow, like I know some things, I know what I'm doing. Like you learn so much in that those early stages. I think one of the nice things is that learning never stops, but it's just those first couple of years are just really special, I think. But then at the same time, like cyber is constantly changing. Like I spent a couple of years, one of the areas that I focused in was helping clients with ransomware readiness, and like, how can I help you prepare for this? Like, that's not something that wasn't a thing when I got out of school, right? It was something that some people invented as a new way to get money out of companies. And then companies needed to figure out strategies on how to address that, so that has a kind of a peak, and then it kind of starts coming back down because people are feeling better about how they tackle that particular problem. But then there's a new problem that comes up after that. And so I think that's the part that's really fun. I think the challenge, or like in comparison to industry roles, I kind of think if I was going to switch into industry, it would be like the work I do now, but I would only have one client and kind of only one project forever, potentially. And so you do have the opportunity to go really deep in a specific, like really understand your business, the culture, everything else like that. So I think that when you have a lot of different clients and you're kind of bouncing around in that way, like you aren't getting as much of that, which is why you have to have, like other people have said, those really strong relationships with your clients so that you can lean on them, because you're just not going to know as much about their particular workplace and the unique challenges that they're facing. So you have to work together.
Fair. Well, Tricia, you brought up the question, would you want to start in consulting or would you want to end in consulting? I'd be curious for anyone. I'm hoping that there are a lot of people listening in right now who are thinking about consulting as a potential place to start their cyber career, whether that's career transitioners or people who are just coming out of school, or, I'm guessing there's a wide variety of folks listening in right now. I'd be curious if there is somebody who had the opportunity to ask questions. By the way, please throw your questions in the chat because we'll have some time here in a minute. If that person could ask this team, how do I get started, or what advice would you give me to get started? What would you do? Charles, what would you share with those folks?
I would probably say be curious. And I think that's probably the tagline for cybersecurity as a whole. So I probably summed up a good amount of my years in 2 minutes, but probably an expansion on that was that I was a very non-traditional student, right? So 10 plus years government, and then starting in industry, and then moving to consulting later. I don't think there's really a wrong answer. For me, it was, what is something I'm passionate about? And then, do I want to follow this thread and get into this career? Whether it was industry or consulting. I started in industry first, and I'm grateful for that. But moving into consulting, I think really provided me with, as Harry stated, kind of the challenge is almost the pro. So transitioning, I don't think is ever really a negative. You find a part about consulting that you're passionate about, and you kind of pull on that string and determine if you're the best fit for it.
Love it. Luz, how about you? Anything for those entering the field?
Yeah, I would say don't discount your background or any expertise or experience you've already gained through past experiences, past endeavors, or anything like that. Kind of piggybacking off of some of the things that the team has said here already, is that you can always take what you've built upon and kind of tailor it to where you want to go next. Find for ways where you can take whatever skills you have and make the case of why they're transferable to cybersecurity. As you guys have heard here, consulting can look so different in so many ways, and there's so many roles that you can take within it. So things like any experience you have in your industry already, we're always looking for like SMEs in that area, because you help inform like what are the challenges that our clients are facing, what are some of their drivers in their specific industry or areas, what are things we should be looking out for. So I would say don't discount any of that. Don't think that you have to start all over just because you're thinking of pivoting into something that might be totally different than what you've done before. There's always opportunity and ways to kind of tailor yourself and your background to where you want to go next. That would be my main advice there.
Love it. Well, Charles, you came off mute. Did you want to add something?
I was going to add to what Les said. I think you can use your previous experiences almost as a springboard, right? Like, we as humans are constant learners. I think everything that we've experienced, good or bad, does provide us with some experience for moving forward. Like, so I, right, service member, was able to translate at least a lot of those non-technical skills to soft skills that Tricia was talking about, and to moving into consulting. So very much utilizing everything you've learned up to that point in time in life to continue keeping you moving forward in consulting is absolutely wonderful advice.
Love it.
And I'll just say the other thing, like from an industry perspective, it's depending on when you are transitioning in your career, your role may become like part of your role is finding projects and things and problems that we can help our clients with, right? There is a sales element. I always thought that my job, like, I'm not a salesperson. Like, when this role becomes a sales role, like, that's when I'll leave, right? It hasn't happened yet, because what I learned is that selling is having a network and people that trust you to help solve problems with them. And so for me, I've developed that network really organically through the work that I do, in a thoughtful way. But then I would say, if you're coming from industry, trying to do your best to maintain the network and the contacts that you have, and stay in touch with people that worked with you at that company, or that meant to other places in the industry. Like, often within industries, even financial services, which is a huge industry, that security, like it's not that big, and so you run into a lot of the same people. And so those networks are really important. And so coming from industry, you'll have, your own unique network as well.
I love that. And I think it transitions well into some of the questions that we're getting from the audience. So I'm going to pivot a little bit off of our planned talk track and start thinking about some of the things that are coming in from the audience. So please keep sharing them. Tricia, I think you bring up one of the, I would say, kind of two most common things I hear about that are challenges, or maybe people think of as potential negatives to consulting. One being the element of you have to, quote unquote, sell work. And I think you addressed that really wisely. And my experience is similar in that I don't feel like I sell. I'm not a salesperson. I feel like I get my friends reach out because they need help with something and they trust me and they know that together we'll figure that out, or that I know the right person to tap. And that is such a cool opportunity when a friend reaches out and needs help and you get to help them be successful. That is one of the things that I love about this job and keeps me in it. And I think it's not sales. It's, to your point, it's keeping strong relationships and caring about each other. I would say the other negative that we generally hear about consulting is that it's really hard to maintain work-life balance. And I know there was a question that came in from the audience about that. So does anyone have any thoughts on either of those points, on their success stories or experiences that they've had to manage those two concepts?
Yeah, I'll chime in here. It's, I think the perception is that, the workload is high, right? Meaning that, we as consultants, we typically put in, a lot more than just 40 hours a week, right? That is to an extent true, but I think, where we get in return, at least for myself, is the flexibility, right? Consulting, although it's high paced, high pressure, it's a job that's results oriented, right? Oftentimes we have to deliver the results to our clients, right? We have some kind of deliverables that we're providing to them. So, and because it's results based, right? It's there comes an element of flexibility, right? So I think that's how I have been leveraging to strike that balance in my life, right? I have two kids as well, 9 and 4. So sometimes life getting in the way, right? So I have to focus a bit more on the family side. But like I'll make it up, right? I'm fine working late hours, right? In return, I get flexibility, unlike the typical 9 to 5 sit in your office job where it's a lot, there are a lot more limitations, right? So yeah, in a way the workload is might be higher than some of the industry jobs, but I think the flexibility provided, but obviously that flexibility comes with a price, right? You need to build a trust with your client, right? People don't just give you flexibility for no good reasons, right? If they trust the work, if they trust that you're going to deliver the results, right, you will get the flexibility. And oftentimes, this is something I find really unique about Protiviti as well, is the appreciation of that flexibility within the company, right? So pretty much everybody I've worked with, we all share that concept of, hey, let's deliver the results and let's give each other some flexibility. So I really like that, and in a way, I think it's not as bad as some people might think. So oftentimes I feel like I still have a good balance, right, within my life. So that's very positive.
I think one of the things I mean, you can have bad bosses, right? And so I'm like acknowledging that possibility. But consulting is, I would say, the kind of job where you can work yourself to death. I'm never done. I don't stop working because I've completed all the work that I could possibly do. That is never the situation, right? It is the kind of job where you do have to have some ability to understand like priorities, understand what is urgent, needs to be done now, also allowing for time for things that are important but not urgent. Like, how do you balance all of those things? I think time management and just how you organize your day is really important. And then something I say to people I'm like, I work as hard as I can and still like my job, and then, and there are going to be periods that are crunch time where you have to put in longer hours. And that happens at every job, but you can have boundaries, and this is not your family. This is not your real life. Like, I think one of the nice things about consulting is that there is a team environment, and that's great because if, Harry has a thing with his kids, and like we can all pick up the slack, because, that's a priority. And so it's the understanding of that. I think I think it is something where you do have to have some ability to manage it for yourself and create some of those boundaries, because people will always, just in your career, this is industry consulting. Like, if you work more, they'll take more. So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I do think one of the things I think is unique about consulting is that almost, and especially at Protivity, I feel like there's almost more of an entrepreneurial spirit. And so like as an entrepreneur or somebody who's like trying to grow my portion of the business, that means I could spend endless hours trying to get out there and go do more networking and go try and talk to more people about it. But ultimately,
limit does not exist.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And what I think is really unique about our firm, or at least in my experience, is that it's such like a people-oriented organization that it's more about making you feel fulfilled and that the work gets done versus always trying to hit the next number, because that is how how the world does run in some cases. And so I agree, Tricia, the idea of like setting your own boundaries is so important. We talk to a lot of our consultants who are joining the firm right out of college about owning their career. And that's one of the things we really mean about that, is understanding where your energy and your focus can be driven. Anyone else? I have a technical question next, kind of, which is one of the questions from the audience is certifications. So I think we have all heard this question. I have for my advisees many times on what certifications should we get. I think it's really different for different parts of the organization. So I'd be curious if maybe it's less about the right cert or which certifications on this call, but just more about the value that any of you have received from certifications or certification trainings. Recommend? Don't recommend? Should we get certs?
Yes. I say yes, but also I didn't get my first certification until I had been in the field for 2 years. But also I came to the field with an undergrad in cybersecurity. I do see that there is a benefit to certifications as long as they're done strategically, I think. And I think that benefit is high, where you pick up, so in the chat, there's Network Security Plus and then CCNA, right? So 2 of those are network focused. I used to have one of them, and then one is security focused, where it's more of a general practitioner. From a certification perspective, yes, beneficial, but also self-study and kind of working OJT, learning the skills on your own and then taking the certification as well. I think I don't really think one is more important than the other, and all three together make you, like a more powerful employee, so to speak. Having certifications to back it up is just handy. Having the skills overall, I think, is probably the most beneficial thing. That said, there's the piece of paper that says, I can do this is still very important.
I agree with everything Charles said, but also to add to that, like you mentioned, there's value in them. I think more valuable is just the learning process that you get from it and having to figure some stuff out on your own, and kind of the self-discipline you get from going through that process. But then also, just when you're going through it, keeping in mind everything you're learning, and then like how are you going to apply it to your day-to-day, because it's kind of easy to kind of pigeonhole yourself into like, I'm going to learn all this stuff and get this certification and pass this exam, and then like not think about it again and move on to the next one. When it's like, okay, you've achieved this, how can you apply it to your day-to-day? How do you bring that to your conversations with your clients? What are things that you're seeing that kind of relate to some of the stuff you're now learning? And kind of just that process of reevaluating, okay, like what do I do with this now? I think sometimes that doesn't always happen. I think it's just good to keep in mind as well when you're going through that.
I think, Luz, you made many good points, but one of the things I really like you said about it's about showing that you went through the process to get it. I think, at this stage in my career, like getting additional certifications wouldn't provide me a ton of additional like credentializing. But when I was new in my career, and I was like, I want people to know that I know security. I know something. I'm not just like somebody with a BBA and an English degree. Like, I got my CISSP, and I was like, see, I went through the effort. I'm interested enough in this. I went through the effort to study and to take this test. It shows initiative, and it does give you a foundational knowledge and skill set. So it kind of shows both of those things. And I think that can be for people who are trying to break into cyber, or kind of change careers or things like that. I think that it can provide a lot of value.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think certs are really useful when you start to get into a particular domain, like even within cyber, right? Whether cloud security, data security, network security. I think the value of certs, in my opinion, start to diminish as you get more specialized, right? As you yourself start to become an expert in the field, as you start to develop a deeper understanding of that domain. But like we all said, cyber is constantly evolving, right? So as a new domain starts to emerge, for example, AI security, right? And you want to stay up to date. I think that's always a very good first step to see, hey, what are the certs out there, right? It's just, to me, it's a framed and organized way for you to learn and get into that particular domain. And then beyond that, it's really, it's that self-learning, that self-driven continuous learning that's gonna, take you along the way. But as the beginning step, it's always good to get some certs.
Boy, Harry, I think that leads really well into what I'll say is our last audience question. And then I have one more question after that for you all. But everyone is talking about AI. It would be remiss for us not to talk about it here on this call too. And I'd be curious for the audience or our team's perspective on couple of I would say kind of the two prongs on AI. How is it changing the world of security and the way in which we help our clients? Also, how is it changing our jobs as a result, right? Should we feel threatened as consultants with the emergence of AI? Anyone?
I'll say some of that. I don't think so. I don't think we feel threatened, because I mean that change has been underway for a while, right? If you think about the grand scheme of things, right? The availability of information and the transparency of that information, the source of the information, has really been really good for everybody, right? Due to the development of the public internet. So I think AI is just another acceleration of that, right? So in other words, if there's something out there that everybody knows, if there's something that's more like a commodity service, right? Client wouldn't come to consultants for an answer, right? They come to us because of something that is unique, that is bespoke, or like Trish mentioned earlier, they may not have the capacity or they may not have the interest to solve that problem. So I think I always think about that from the angle of AI is supplemental to everybody rather than a threat to anybody. Um, and in our day-to-day job, we get to enjoy the benefit of it, right? At Protivity, we have our own AI tool called ProGPT. It really increases your job efficiency, right? Helping you summarize things, helping you kind of polish an email or a particular paragraph that you're writing, right? I don't think it's going to replace human at least in the near term for what I can see, right? Definitely, I don't think it will affect this particular job because at the end of the day, consulting it's a business of trust, right? I think trust is built between human beings rather than between human and a machine, at least not at this stage.
I think too. I like a ChatGPT, like all those LLMs. They enhance your skills, not replace your skills. It helps you do things better and faster. But some of those results, like you need a human to kind of weed some of those things out. So I definitely think it's not a replacement, but we do have to adapt and change and use those things in new and better ways. And then, I'm sure Luz could speak to this too, but like threat actors are using AI. And so our adversaries are using these things. And so we have to also be aware of how they're using those things and how do we react to those things. So it's kind of, it's both sides are using it.
Yeah, I think that it's changing the way we all work, and consultants are no exception. But ultimately, it's actually providing, I would say, new opportunities for us. Like there's a lot of our clients who are wondering about AI governance, and that is something that happens often under the security umbrella at organizations. There's a lot of work around developing those LLMs for them, and so that's really opened the door for us, I would say, to do more. And to your point, Tricia, and Luz's whole field, like it just means that the threat actors are getting smarter and better at using it. So now we have to get smarter and better at defending against it. So anyway, I think it's fascinating. I was at a panel talk recently where the interviewee said, you are very likely not going to lose your job to AI. You are going to lose your job to someone who is using AI if you're not already. And that was really insightful for me. And I think how I'm thinking about my day-to-day and pushing myself to get active more often. So I think that was a great moment to just kind of reflect on the future. And so now let's all reflect on our past a little bit and the future of hopefully some of the folks on this call. My favorite way to end these conversations is always with I think, go-to encapsulation question is, what advice do you have for our listeners? Folks who are maybe interested in cyber generally, consulting generally, or maybe that balance to join us somewhere along the road one day. Luz, I'm going to go to you first. I know that wasn't expected, but would love to hear your thoughts on what advice do you have for attendees today as they think about their career?
Yes, so I would like to say that work to train yourself and your mind to see opportunities even in places you don't expect to see them. The reason I say that is because a lot of times people see careers as being linear or being this direct path to somewhere. And it's fine for you to start thinking that way, but you're going to quickly realize that's not how it works or how the world works. In hindsight, looking back, when I first started out, there were a lot of like opportunities or chances of things that I almost wanted to say no to or not go with because it wasn't what I wanted to do. It wasn't what I had in mind. It wasn't what I had planned. And it wasn't like the path that I had in my head of how things are going to go. And there were times where I was like pushed into it by mentors or coaches or people like, no, you should still do this or you should still try this. And I didn't really have an interest, but going through it, I did learn a lot. And it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense. Or actually, I didn't 100% enjoy this, but I did learn these things. And there were skills that I was able to take on to the next step. Or somewhere along the lines, I went off path or did a project that was not related to what I wanted to do. But I either made connections or learned things that kind of helped me pivot to the things I did want to do. And so all that to say that, like, always be open to opportunity, even if it doesn't seem like it's something that's going to lead you to where you want to go, and train your mind to see that in things, even in challenges, especially in challenges, I would say, or situations where are really challenging, or maybe you're going through a hard project or a difficult client situation and you're just like, I want out of this right now. Just hang in there and just try to reframe your mindset on things. Trust me, you'll get there and it'll all make sense and eventually work out. And I wish, like, in hindsight, if I was talking to Luz 4, 5, 6 years ago, that's what I would tell her.
Love it. Awesome.
I love that too. I tell people some of those same things. Like, if I was going to pick the projects in my career, like, it wasn't always the most coolest, sexiest whiz bang thing, but you learn so much and your career is long. And so try to embrace those opportunities. The other thing I would add too is, somebody said this recently, and I thought it was so smart, about you just start, like, be a little bit brave and, like, push yourself just a little bit where you can, because you'll find over time your definition of discomfort changes. The things that felt really scary to you over time become less scary. It just as naturally happens. And so you don't even realize it in the moment. And there were things where I was like, oh my God, I could never ask that question. But then, you ask it 50 times and you're like, well, I don't even, it's fine now. And so just being aware that, like, pushing yourself is something that, like, it's like a huge thing to do. And so if you can just be a little bit brave and push yourself into your discomfort, I think that it really pays off.
What I've heard in relation to that is get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Especially in an area where everything's constantly changing and you're constantly being challenged.
Mm-hmm.
Charles, any more words of wisdom?
I think since I probably can't follow that up quite as well,
Beautiful.
but with something that Luz said was regarding opportunity. Somebody much smarter than me once told me years ago that opportunity is often missed because it looks like work, and I think that makes perfect sense. Some of the opportunities that I've been presented with over the years have been very difficult, very, very different than what I would have expected, but I learned from all of them. I think don't be afraid to work for your position. Be strategic in where you are trying to go from 1 year to the next, or the next 3, or the next 5, but don't shy away from any challenges that may be presented to you, because they will ultimately make you better.
All right, Harry, we are all relying on you to put a perfect bow on it. This is your moment. What do you have to share?
Yeah, related to that, like, don't be afraid to make mistakes, right, in the field, and having the ability to own your mistakes, right, especially in consulting. That's one of the foundation aspects of building trust between you and your clients, right, is, knowing when to admit, hey, I messed up here, right, but that's okay, I'll fix it for you, right? But I'll say the one mistake you don't want to make is do anything too silly in this field. Cybersecurity, although it's growing fast, it's still a very small industry. Words get out really, really fast. So if you do something silly, people will know, no matter where you are. Yeah, I think that sums it up.
Love it. Take smart chances. Something
Yep.
like that. Love it. Well, thank you all so much for your feedback. I'm getting messages already on how great this panel was, and that's thanks to all of you. So thank you for sharing your feedback, your ideas, and thank you everyone for joining us today on behalf of Cyversity and the Twin Cities chapter and my colleagues here at Protiviti. Thank you very much, and hope everyone is off to a great next step in their career journey. Thanks all.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Everyone.